now, our case study is Willy Wonka and his chocolate factory. And given that this is a Petra coach call and leaders eat last, first, we're going to dive in with Wonka about what his team members might be able to expect from the CARES Act. First things first, recovery rebate or money in the bank. Who will receive these dollars? You must be a U.S. citizen or resident, not a dependent of someone else. So if your firm has a lot of college kids who are working full-time and full-time students, if they are dependents of their parents still, they will not be covered. Work eligible Social Security number and your AGI needs to be under 75,000 if you're a single filer, 112.5 for head of household, and then 150,000 married filing jointly. Phase outs will apply after that. They're a little bit complex on this one. I'll get to that in a second. How much will they receive? 1,200 individual filer, 2,400 joint filer, and then $500 for each child under age 17. Not 17 and under age 17. So if you have a 17-year-old, this will not apply. The amount of the phase out is $5 for each $100. So it depends also on the amount of children. Think of this rebate as a bucket, the maximum amount you could have qualified for, and then they're going to strip away some dollars if you're over the phase out amount. If you have no children, your sort of guardrails are if you make over 198 together married filing jointly, you would not get this rebate amount, or single filer of 99, you're out of luck on that. Other notes for Wonka as he helps his team get through this and also helps himself understand if he has to have layoffs, what they might have to be able to take advantage of. He needs to guide them to verify the direct deposit bank account they last used on a tax filing, because that's where the money's headed. If you use direct deposit on your tax return, that's the place they want to send it. If that bank account no longer exists, that's going to be a problem. You also need to guide them to verify the mailing address on the last return they filed. If they've moved, they need to use Form 8822. The reason is if they moved and they changed their bank account, there will be a letter issued within 15 days of the direct deposit. And so if you've moved, change your bank, close your bank account, and then you didn't update your address with the IRS, it's going to be one heck of a mess. Also, just a few quick notes. If you haven't filed your 2019 return, you may want to go ahead and file it now if it is more favorable for this rebate. If your 2020 income is below those thresholds I mentioned, you may, if your 2020 income is below the threshold, but it was above it for 2019, you'll still get the rebate, but a year from now with your 2020 return. So if you don't qualify for 2019, but your income drops this year and you do, you'll just have to wait a year to get your money. If you get money on your 2019 return and you get it deposited now, but then in 2020, when everything rebounds, you make more money, they will not claw it back. And then another item of note, it's not going to be taxable income. Okay, next on the list of help Wonka's employees can receive. If someone is diagnosed with COVID-19, their spouse or dependent is diagnosed with COVID-19. And here's where a lot more people will qualify. If they experience adverse financial consequences as a result of being quarantined, furloughed, laid off, or having their work hours reduced because of COVID-19, or they are unable to work because they lack childcare during this time, they will now have access to funds in their IRA and their employer plans. So that's where Wonka needs to pay attention. His employees now could have access to Wonka's 401k plan. When and how much? It'll be up to $100,000 in combination of IRA and employer plans. It can happen anytime in 2020. So if there was a withdrawal in January, that will retroactively still apply to this. They made it for the entire year. Taxes owed can be spread over a 3-year period. You must decide. You'll either pay it in tax year 2020 or you'll defer it and pay it over 3 years. You can't pay a little here and pay more later. The withdrawal can be repaid back into the account over 3 years. 20% mandatory withholding out of the 401k can be waived if they note that it's a coronavirus-related distribution. And the 10% early withdrawal penalty will be waived for those under 59 and a half. So a couple notes on that. Obviously, as a business owner, Wonka is going to need to get his employer plan advisor involved and help him figure this out. If he decides later in the year, if he's got enough cash and he's going to file taxes in July, maybe he's going to defer his safe harbor one time a year contribution to the Wonka plan. He may find himself in a position where if he's going to retire in a couple of years and he's still trying to maximize his own retirement plan contribution, I think it's important to note on this strategically that if he still does his profit sharing plan contribution, the employees now have access to go in and grab that cash. So come July, still do the retirement plan contribution, but now Wonka's employees can go in and grab that cash if they need it. Typically, while still employed, that would have to stay there until they left employment or they retired. So Wonka will want to advise his employees to talk to their own personal investment advisor, talk to the Wonka plan investment advisor before making a withdrawal, also with their tax preparer. This is something that's been added. It's typically in areas that have had damage from, say, a hurricane. So the plans do know how to work this into the withdrawal. Your plan may need to be amended. Plan loans were also enhanced. As a side note, it was typically 50% of your vested amount. Now you can take a loan out for 100% of your vested amount. Also, the maximum loan increased to $100,000. And they delayed payments on current loans for up to 1 year. So this is a place where small businesses are going to need their retirement plan providers to help them out with their employees.
Hey, Teresa, before you move to this next slide, there's a couple of questions that have come in based on some of the previous information. And then Allison Stackpole, if you've got your hand raised, if you wouldn't mind putting your question in the Q&A box, it'll be awesome. So one of them is, if your income exceeds the phase outs, can you get the $500 for a kid?
So that's where it gets more complicated. I'll be happy, Andy, to send you a chart. It's think of it as a bucket, all of your possible, and then it's going to phase out $5 for every $100. Even the 500 of the kids goes into that bucket.
Okay, so the answer is yes, and it'll be reduced at some level.
Yes.
Okay, and then the other question was around, does resident definition include green card holders as well as OPT students? And that's open to anyone.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be able to speak to at this time. I'd have to look into that.
All right, so maybe DP or Mark, we can start doing a little bit of research on that and we'll get back to you on it. So just had a couple of questions and I'll jump in as I see stuff. If you can hold your questions till the end, it'd be awesome. Go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah. Other items for Wonka to keep in his team notes. Unemployment, if he does have to let someone go, it's been expanded. There's now pandemic unemployment insurance. That also now covers those that didn't typically qualify, even self-employed. So if he has a contractor, for example, that sole job is really making Wonka's candy wrapper designs, and suddenly Wonka doesn't need any more design work, that self-employed individual will now qualify for unemployment. So he doesn't need to worry about that designer guy. Elimination period is now waived. You used to have to wait for benefits. I believe it's a week. Also, $600 will be added to each state's typical benefit for 8 extra weeks. Student loans, really generous student loan payment deferral as part of the CARES Act. So if you do have young adults working for you, know that they will be able to turn off payment for their federal student loan until September 30th. They must call and stop the payments though. If their loans qualify, the lenders are not just going to turn the payments off for them. So they have the ability to call in, stop the payments if they do qualify. Other item of notes for Wonka's team, group health coverage has expanded in the wake of COVID-19 to cover testing, also any immunization, further preventative medicine for COVID-19. And they've expanded telehealth restrictions. I know there's been a lot of buzz about that. I believe your HSA now will even cover telehealth reimbursement. I believe that's covered. All right. So that